And I'd like to introduce our second panelist, Scott Lynn. Uh, he's with the Kickapoo Valley Dark Sky Initiative and a whole lot of other stuff as far as I as as I hear. So Scott, you're up next.
Yeah, as Mark mentioned, I wear a few hats. Today I'm representing the Kickapoo Valley Dark Sky Initiative, which is a group that was started in southwest Wisconsin to establish a 13,000 acre dark sky park in this area. I still work part time as a consulting electrical engineer, and I spend most of my time as a volunteer master electrician uh, installing light fixtures in southwest Wisconsin and advocating for better lighting policies to municipalities and specifiers. So that's where I spend most of my time. But it's a great opportunity to talk to you today. I want to bring up these definitions just one more time. Leora shared these earlier, and these are really the things that are key to understanding um, how we're going to specify and choose light fixtures that have different and better sky glow impacts than what we often see. So it's really about the quantity of light as measured in lumens, the color of the light, and whether the light how its distribution occurs. And these are really the three key things. We're going to focus a lot today on color temperature. So this is a study that I've shared very widely out of Chelan County, Washington. It's about 6 years old now, 5 years old now. But really, for me, this is a turning point, and actually how I ended up meeting Leora, because this study exactly paralleled the experience we had locally in the process of trying to establish this dark sky park, which right now is on hold because our skies got dramatically brighter. And really, the takeaways from the study in Chelan County were if you were going to change out high pressure sodium street lighting in an area and replace it with primarily 3000 Kelvin LEDs, which meets Dark Sky International requirements, with a little bit of 4000 K on some of the highways, the sky is going to get dramatically brighter, even when you reduce the lumens dramatically. So uh, the same thing happened locally. We replaced a lot of streetlights in two communities at either end of this proposed dark sky park, and I replaced a lot of fixtures within the parks themselves, but the sky got almost exactly the same, 60% brighter over the course of 30 months. And it wasn't until I read the study that I had any understanding of why it got so much brighter, but now we know why that is. And so, really, the solution that I want to talk about today with these new products that Leora mentioned is that we have to go to lower CCTs. So I just want to bring these up. We're not going to discuss these. Why do you care? Kind of the title of this presentation is Beyond Birds. Why would you care about this topic? And it really has widespread impacts. And so the appeal of trying to do something different with outdoor lighting crosses kind of a wide bandwidth of society. And it's really can be a great impact on preserving birds, but it has much broader impacts. So many of you may have seen a similar graphic to this. I like the order of this one personally because it places color temperature closer to the front, and I'll explain that in a bit. But really, these are the key items to talk about in terms of outdoor lighting is, shielding it, what color temperature is it, how much is there, and then how do you control it? How often is it on? And that goes right to the point about birdcasts, especially, right? How can we adjust those things when we know birds are migrating, especially? But from my perspective, I want to see these things improved all the time, every night, because of all the wide-ranging impacts that I discussed in the previous slide. So the first, concept really is where are you trying to light? What's the purpose of the light? And this example is really showing for a street light, you're lighting the street and maybe a sidewalk behind the pole. And by definition, all the rest of the light that's put onto lawns, that put onto the front of buildings, certainly light going to the sky, is by definition wasted light. The only useful light in this uh, application is what's going to the street and what's going to that sidewalk. And in terms of amount of light, one key thing to think about is, the reflected light coming off of the ground. So that street light that's hitting a black asphalt pavement has very low reflectance, very little light's reflected to the sky. But in states like Wisconsin that get snow in the wintertime, 90% of that light might be reflected. And so that's why having the correct amount of light is critical You don't want to overlight, even though under some circumstances, a lot of that light would be absorbed. It's a really important point. So I just want to show you a physical example of what a zero direct uplight looks like. We had that definition earlier. These wall-mounted lights that I installed happen to be 1800 Kelvin in color temperature. That's the warm LEDs that really provide the best in terms of reducing sky glow for a broad spectrum LED light. And you can see in the side view on the left there that there's no light that's going directly up from that fixture. At the horizontal 90-degree angle, that light is cut off. But we still have great distribution onto the deck in this case. Another issue that often comes up in discussing outdoor lighting is safety. And this is another image you may have seen before, but it's important to know that adding more light often produces too much contrast and increases glare. And that individual that's at the gate in the bottom photo is also standing at the gate in the upper photo, but the camera couldn't capture that because of that high contrast between the two scenes, and our eyes function the same way. So by providing lights that are zero uplight, reducing the intensity of the light, we can have dramatically better vision at night and really improve safety, not only for maybe an individual that's a hazard to us, but things like tripping hazards or other obstacles that you might not see. It's the same as when you're in a car. The headlights can illuminate what's right in front of them, but everything off angle, you can't see that in the dark. So there's an individual that I want to introduce to you. Nick Messler does a lot of street lighting work with a consulting firm out in the West Coast. And he posts frequently on LinkedIn and speaks frequently. And the reason I want you to think about following his work is because he's really, I think, a good, I'll say, aggregator of information. He tends to follow a lot of publications and posts that talk about the issues of light and safety, as well as the data-driven analysis that they do as part of their street lighting analysis. They have the ability to model entire cities' streetlight systems. Literally take an inventory of every single streetlight in a large city, look at the exact photometric performance for every single fixture, and they vary from fixture to fixture, and then put that into a computer model and a supercomputer and run that for multiple days, and then model the light output of the city. And then they can compare that GIS data to traffic safety, to crime data, and see where things align and where they don't align. And as a result of having that huge database available to him and to others, put out some really interesting results in terms of what they see, what their findings are. So here's another piece of research that was recently published, I think just June of 2025. And this is why I want you to suggest considering following Nick if you're interested in this part of the topic, because this is where I became aware of this study. But really it's, it just adds to the growing body of research that you have the perception of safety with more light, but the link between these two things is not demonstrated. And that continues to be developed in other areas as well. This is another analysis, has nothing to do with crime, but I found it fascinating in France that 19,000 municipalities starting back in 2014 were turning off streetlights in the middle of the night from midnight to 5 a.m. roughly. And of those 19,000, only 131 have decided to turn them back on, 0.68%. And while there's no inference here about crime in my mind, maybe incorrectly, if I think of the 19,000 communities, had they had increases in crime they considered significant, I have a feeling that more than 0.68% would be turning lights back on. So let's talk about color temperature more. This is the color spectrum that we see from sunlight throughout the day. During the middle of the day, it's very high, 5,500 Kelvin, very similar to what new headlights are on cars. If those annoy you, that's about 5,500 Kelvin typically. And then as we get closer to night, that color temperature drops. And that's really, the the light that we should be installing at night should be as close as possible to these warmer color temperatures. We do not want these high blue content LEDs impacting us at night for many, many reasons. And one of them is sky glow increase. So as you increase the blue content of these LED sources, as the color temperature goes up, the blue content increases. That scatters more in the atmosphere. And these are the increases in sky glow using calculators from the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory on sky glow impacts from changing spectrum only. So the same amount of lumens in an identical fixture can have this large of an increase in sky glow impact just by changing color temperature. And I think when you look at these numbers, you'll understand better why what I install now is only 1800K and 2200K, with very rare exceptions for 2700 Kelvin. But I will no longer install a 3000 Kelvin fixture or higher because of these impacts. So when I'm asking people to install these low CCT fixtures, those people who are familiar with high pressure sodium think this is what I'm asking them to put up with. You can see the color rendering from high pressure sodium is incredibly poor. And many people who are familiar with this idea of color temperature and high pressure sodium, this is what they think of. But this is the color rendering you can get even from an 1800K LED, which has a very warm golden tone, but has great color rendering performance. Now here's an example looking at 2200 Kelvin compared to 4000 Kelvin. So 2200 Kelvin is white light, but I showed you earlier how much less sky glow impact it has. And when you look at the 4000 Kelvin, which is a lot of what gets used on highways across the United States and in many communities for their streetlights, 75% almost more sky glow than 2200K. And in my view, at least, you're sacrificing almost nothing in terms of color rendering. I do a lot of retrofits locally of fixtures, and here's just one example using 1800 Kelvin. So you can see the upper picture shows a fire station that was illuminated using a combination of things, really. Incandescent wall lights, high pressure sodium wall lights, and a couple of 5000 Kelvin LEDs. And I changed that to be 1800 Kelvin, zero uplight fixtures. And in this case, I did not make any attempt to reduce the light levels on the ground. I kept the average light level and the minimum light level exactly the same. And I had dimmers in all the new fixtures so I could precisely control that. But uniformity drastically improved. And just so you know, the reason I didn't decrease light levels, even though they are far above the IAS recommended levels, was to make sure I gained acceptance of the lower color temperature and zero uplight fixtures. The beautiful thing about this is that now we have dimmers installed. I can easily go back and reduce those light levels to what the IAS recommendations would be. But it's really an example of where, even without incentives, these fixtures at the time they were installed did not qualify for incentives. They will, hopefully with the next version of the DLC qualified products list. But even without those incentives, we had very, very quick paybacks on these fixtures because that light that was previously going to the sky is now going to the ground. We could use lower lumens and still maintain that kind of light level on the ground. So with LEORA and the DLC, this is what it looks like in Wisconsin. Our program here is called Focus on Energy, and I'm using that a lot right now with municipal street lighting projects because 2200K fixtures that are listed on that QPL are eligible for very large incentives. And I can get paybacks measured in months in many cases when we put an appropriate amount of light on a roadway at 2200K that are qualified for these DLC incentives. So as Leora mentioned, if you're looking to do better outdoor lighting, especially municipal lighting, but better outdoor lighting in general, make sure that you're aware and tuned in to whatever incentives are available in your state. And also, because we're trying to get these warmer color temperature fixtures, it's really critical to understand which fixtures are listed on that QPL. So you know that the qualified products list from DLC, so you'll know that they qualify for the incentives. So a summary of all this is really, we want to make sure we have lower color temperature fixtures, 2200K or lower, 1800 Kelvin where possible. So if you have folks that aren't saying they have to have white light. And you'd be surprised. When I installed these fixtures, they're actually a selectable color temperature from 1800K to 2700K. I expected pushback from folks. I thought the really gold 1800K would be a turnoff for people, and quite the opposite. I've installed, I think, 70 or 80 of these fixtures on buildings in multiple communities, and nobody has asked me to change the color temperature higher, even though they knew that it can. They know it's adjustable. They haven't asked me to do that, which I found remarkable and encouraging. I think when we switched from high pressure sodium to LEDs in the first generation, and even today, people accept that that's the only choice. They don't think about it. And now we have much better choices, many more manufacturers making products at these lower color temperatures. And once you install them, I found that people like them better. Obviously, only install zero uplight fixtures, only install as many lumens as you need to meet the IES standards. There are many, many places where things are overlit. It's very, very common to have far too high light levels compared to the IES standards. And then, of course, wherever possible, add controls, turn fixtures off in the middle of the night, do it like France does, I guess I'll say. Add motion sensors so they're only on when there's somebody in the vicinity that needs them, because these really are for humans. They're not for anything else. And then apply dimmers wherever you can to reduce the intensity of the light the same way. So feel free to reach out to me as well. This is the nonprofit we created for the Dark Sky Park. I try to use it to drive action locally, but the DLC qualifier products list, which will get updated with the new standards when testing starts next year in 2026, early 2026, will have many more low CCT products. And in the interim, we keep a product list on this website only because we try to make it convenient for electricians and businesses to go find them. But ultimately, you can get to that information for the fixtures that qualify for incentives from the DLC site. But please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions with these topics on these fixtures in the future. And thank you.